me. My name is Miss Lizzie. I don't ever smoke the dizzy, but we can always share some ditties. It's just a cup in time. This song doesn't have to rhyme. Life's all of us, not every moment we can be feeling fine. I wanna share a moment, just a second if you will, maybe even a cup of thrill. We could share this performance. It's tea time, come sit with me.
Well, welcome guys. Miss Liz is back in the house. I've been here this morning, this afternoon, and now this evening. That is right. We've done 3 shows today on Tea Time. Tonight I have Terrance Niedziela in the house, and we're going to talk about his book series and all that good stuff. And we're also going to talk about his tea. And his tea tonight is tenaciously encouraging, and expressiveness. That is the 3 words that we were going to talk about tonight, and a bunch of other good things that we're going to bring to the table for all of you listeners out there. But before we get started, you guys know how Miss Liz rolls. Get over to all those platforms: Facebook, TikTok, LinkedIn, Instagram, Clapper, Lemonade, all those good ones, Blue Sky. Give those a like, follow, and subscribe. And if you notice in the descriptions of all the guests, you'll find all of their platforms as well. Give those a like, follow, and subscribe as well, because it does make a difference for the guests to have you support them as well. So then jump over to the podcast apps of Podbean, Listen Notes, Deezer, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all that good platforms. Miss Liz is on all of those as well. Give those a like, follow, and subscribe as well. Then jump over to babyboomers.org. If you're looking for something that Miss Liz is not offering, there's over 50 different podcasts there, and you can get featured there on those platforms as well. So check out babyboomers.org and see the incredible podcasters that are over there. I always like to encourage and support my colleagues that are out there on the business field. So let's get started with disclaimer and then a beautiful intro, and then we're going to get Terrance in here, and we're going to spill some tea and have some fun with all of you guys tonight. Disclaimer for Miss Liz's Tea Time live show. Miss Liz's Tea Time is a global platform dedicating to sharing real-life stories, diverse perspectives, and meaningful conversations that inspire awareness, healing, and connection. I'm Miss Liz is going live using StreamYard. Before leaving a comment during the live broadcast, please grant StreamYard permission to display your name at StreamYard.com. Please be advised that all the content brought forward during any Tea Time show is presented in good faith. However, discussions may include opinions, beliefs, and perspectives that do not necessarily represent the views of Miss Liz or the Tea Time platform. Information shared by guests is based on their own experiences and is perceived to be accurate at the given time of airing. All guests, viewers, and participants are responsible for using their own good judgment when considering any action that may relate to these discussions. Some episodes may cover sensitive topics, including but not limited to trauma, abuse, grief, mental health, and other emotionally triggering subjects. Listeners' and viewers' discretion is strongly advised. Tea Time with Miss Liz is an open discussion forum designed to offer insight, inspire awareness, and create connection. It is not a substitute for professional, medical, legal, or therapeutical advice. If you require professional support, please seek assistance from qualified professionals or trusted resources in your area. If you have any questions regarding this disclaimer or the content of the discussion, you are welcome to contact me, aka Miss Liz, directly at bookingmissliz@gmail.com or visit my link tree at Miss Liz's Tea Time. By choosing to participate in, comment on, or view these live shows, you acknowledge and accept this disclaimer. Your participation is entirely voluntary. I, Miss Liz, welcomes you to join the conversation with an open heart, and if at any time you feel this platform is not right for you, I respect your wishes and decision and welcome you back whenever you are ready. Tea Time with Miss Liz is serving truth and awareness 1 cup at a time. Well, welcome to Tea Time with Miss Liz, where every conversation reminds us that stories have the power to shape hearts, ignite imagination, and inspire us to become the heroes of our own journeys. Today, we are honored to welcome someone whose life's passion for storytelling has become both his calling and his gift to readers around the world. Please join me in welcoming Terrance Niedziela Jr., award-winning speculation fiction author, educator, devotional writer, and creator of the Tales of Aras series. From writing his very first stories as a 4th grade student to earning degrees in ancient Middle East history, creative writing, and English, Terrance has devoted his life to exploring the incredible connections between history, faith, imagination, and storytelling. As a school English teacher, he encourages young minds to think creativity, ask meaningful questions, and discover the courage hidden behind every great story. Through the world of Aras, he invites readers of all ages to journey into adventures filled with hope, purpose, preservation, and unforgettable characters. His tea is tenaciously encouraging and expressiveness. Today, we will explore the inspiration behind the Tales of Aras, how history shapes fantasy, faith and imagination, teaching through storytelling, and encouraging the next generation of creators. Terrance reminds us that stories aren't simply written to entertain us, they're written to encourage us, challenge us, and remind us that courage often begins with believing something greater is possible. So grab your favorite cup and join us for a conversation filled with imagination, inspiration, adventure, and real life tea, truth, experience, and awareness. And let me get Terrance in here and let's spill some tea. Welcome, Terrance.
Welcome. Thank you.
Oh, did I lose you?
I'm still here. Can you hear me?
Oh, there we go. We got you.
There we go.
These
Okay.
little pesty hearing aids of mine, they sometimes kick off and kick on, so we're good to go. So, Terrance, tell us a little bit about yourself, who you were as a little guy. I read a little bit about your fourth grade writing startup, but tell us a little bit about who you were as a younger guy and who you are now.
A little bit. So that means I need to be concise. And as a long-winded guy, that's going to be difficult, but I'm going to try. You made me sound way better than I am. Like I'm some kind of really cool person. Like, wow, that's pretty cool. All right. So I am the oldest of 6 kids. And I grew up in north central Wisconsin, United States. And very imaginative, I've always had a passion for story. I was homeschooled until 3rd grade. And then in 3rd grade, I went to public school because trying to teach all of us kids was a bit too difficult for my awesome mom. And so when I was tested for placement, they found that I had an 8th grade reading level. So I had never really seen a library before until I had gotten to the elementary school. And I'm like, wow, this is amazing. And so I just started grabbing books and reading. So I would burn through a novel like that in a day like it was nothing, And so, in fact, I would spend a lot of time during recess wandering the stacks in the library, hunting up books and things. And really, that's where my passion for fantasy and science fiction, that speculative fiction, really came about. My 3rd grade teacher, Miss Tyler, who was awesome, she showed us this animated film called The Flight of Dragons. And this guy from our world is transported into a magical fantasy world where he's merged with a dragon accidentally because the spell goes bad. And now he's got to learn how to be a dragon in a fantasy world and try and save the world and everything. And I just sat there thoroughly enraptured by this. And so I just started grabbing fantasy books. And, Brian Jakes' Mossflower series is one of the first series that I really was like, this is amazing. C.S. Lewis's Chronicles of Narnia and, that kind of thing. My parents divorced when I was in 5th grade. And home life was really rough before and after. And I made a transition from using story to entertain my siblings, and make up stories, and then I'd watch their facial expressions and then change the story depending on how they were responding, to using it as a way to escape abuse, escape rejection, escape situations that I couldn't control. There was a lot of mess at school too, and bullying and things. And a lot of that was my own fault because my own perceptions were messed up. Because before I started elementary school, I had a family member tell me that because I was a Christian, everyone was going to hate me. And so I went in automatically expecting everyone to hate me. And because they had a very religious, not life-giving view of the world. There's a difference between religion and relationship. And I didn't know that. I thought religion was everything. And it wasn't. And it wasn't until I was in my early 20s that I made that transition over. And that's a part of my story for later. But, and so I created a world worlds in which I was all powerful. I had all the control. I was immortal. Like Superman, couldn't be hurt, because that was the only way. I figured, hey, if I have ultimate control, ultimate power, then no one can hurt me. And so I dove more and more into story. By the time I reached 7th grade, though, I was ready to give up on just about everything. Give up on life, give up on everything. And my 7th grade teacher, Miss Sapitis, pulled me aside. She saw my skill and the gift that God had given me in writing and storytelling, and she encouraged me in it. And that was that lifeline that I needed. And years later, when I graduated from high school, I was working in a local grocery store, and she came in, and I'm like, oh, Miss Sapitis, thank you so much, blah, blah, blah. And she gave me this weird look, and she's like, I was just doing my job. To her, it was just, oh, I'm just doing my job. But to a kid that desperately needed that, it meant everything. And going into high school, I really started to devote myself more to writing and to reading. I've read literally tens of thousands of books, and that's not an exaggeration. It might be more than that, I don't know. But and so that's when I really started going to, okay, I'm going to write a book, and pull myself full into it. I started dabbling a little bit in 4th grade, and then I read what I had written to that same parent, and their criticism led to me tearing up the book and going, I'm never going to let them read anything that I wrote again. What they told me was good in some ways, but the delivery wasn't the best. And yeah. But anyway, so it was in the beginning of I started college. I worked for a really long time in grocery stores and stuff, and didn't even think that I was smart enough to be able to do college. That's how low of a perspective I had of myself. And when I really felt that that's what God wanted me to do, I went to one of my adopted fathers, and his name is Bill, and he's awesome. Like he's so reached in and spoken to my life, even though I annoyed the living snap out of him. He told me this later. He's like, you annoyed the living crap out of me, he said. But he really felt that God wanted him to speak into this really annoying, obnoxious, know-it-all punk kid. And I'm glad he obeyed. I would not be here where I am in any way if it wasn't for him and other men, Luke and others, even some moms, some ladies who were like a mom to me, taught me social skills, taught me all sorts of different kinds of things that I needed. And even now, I'm almost 47 years old, and God's still bringing men and women, older men and women into my life to be fathers and mothers to me. And so he's like, yeah, you definitely need to do college. And so that was actually when the Tales of Aras series kind of had its beginning. So my youngest sister, who's 9 years younger than me, we were close at the time, and I wanted to write her a fantasy story, a short story for her 17th birthday. Well, 20 years later, it finally came out as a novel, and so I actually, in the dedication, I said, to her, and then, sorry, this is 20 years late. And so, in a nutshell, that's kind of, all of that.
Well, it kind of goes in, Terrance, it kind of goes into the first question that comes in from Jason is, what first inspired the Tales of Aras series?
Yeah, it was definitely, my sister and I both had a huge passion for fantasy. In fact, we would run around my dad's 40 acres and, with sticks for swords, or, actually make wooden swords, because my dad was a carpenter, and we'd have these imaginary fights and rescue damsels in distress and fight dragons and all these different types of things and whatever. but I wanted it to be about a brother and sister who are transported to another world. Only this one, there's a 10-year difference. Michael is 27 and Cassandra, his younger sister, is 17. And he becomes a knight, and with flaming armor and flaming sword and these huge wings made out of flames, and he flies and stuff. And then Cassandra, who becomes this ambassador of reconciliation among the 7 races of this world, or this country that they're chucked into, and the power of God flows through her in the form of lightning, golden lightning, that she uses to heal and things like that. And the funny thing is as I worked on it, the little tiny story that I had started to grow. The world itself started to grow until I now have 80,000 years of history for this world, and battles and wars and heroes and all these different types of things. And like, I'm a huge Tolkien fan, so I love the Silmarillion because he did that too. It's just this massive world. And I tried reading the book, and it was not, but I could listen to the audiobook. I love the audiobook. But even like, I'm a huge Star Wars nerd. And so the same thing with the expanded universe of the Star Wars universe. They have all these thousands of years, and then all these books that fill in the gaps, and other book series that I liked throughout the years. And so it developed to each race had their own culture, their own traditions. The dragons, all of their names are Greek. And the Dross, my reptile creature race, they're all French. And my underworld Iktaka creatures, that race is all like Neutal and like Aztec type names. And then the Gwenferai, my aquatic race, they're all Welsh Gaelic, and so on and so forth. And so, and I matched the meaning of the name with the character. And so there's so many different levels of it, in the same way that Tolkien did with his etymology and studying Norse, and Bilbo and Gandalf and Bifur and Bofur and Bombur and all those things. Their names actually reflect their character. It's pretty fun when you look into that. And so I kind of took some pages out of their book and did something very similar to that with my own, Shanazzy style.
Well, Terrance, we have some questions that are coming in. This one is similar to what we just answered. What inspired you to create the world of Aras? The next one we have is coming in from Dawn is, which Tale of Aras book should new readers start with?
Since only one book has come out, probably that one. So Becoming Fire and Lightning is the first book in the Fire and Lightning trilogy, which takes place at the beginning of the 5th Age. In between each of the books in this particular trilogy is going to be a standalone book that covers some of the backstory of one of the minor characters, the secondary characters in the trilogy that are very important. So one of the things that I love, and I'm all like, this is so cool, I love this, at least I think it is Becoming Fire and Lightning ends with 2 sentences that are the first 2 sentences of the saga of Miklos that I'm hoping to release February of next year. Because it's this character Miklos that's hinted at, and he's this really cool, awesome hero who does all these amazing things and whatever. And Michael's like, I'd love to meet this guy, but he disappeared. No one knows what happened to him. And so at the end of the book, he actually, a little bit of a spoiler, he ends up meeting this dude Miklos, and so Amai, the Lord of Light and Life, tells Michael, before you do anything else, before you go further on in your mission, you need to sit down and listen to this dude's story, because there's some lessons that you need to learn. And so Miklos just starts and starts telling, it's the 4th Age, and I'm walking through Terial with my armful of all these different supplies and stuff, because he was also a scholar like Michael. And that's how that book ends. Spoiler alert. But then Saga Miklos begins.
We just take that out. We just back it up.
Yeah, exactly. That's the only thing I'm going to tell you. I won't tell you anything else. But I think it's really cool. Because, there's certain superhero movies and other books and things like that. Like, so-and-so will now appear in blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, that's really cool. I like that. I'm going to steal from the best. So there you go. So
Well, Terrance, I'm going to bring up those books so you can tell everybody about the incredible cover for the audio listeners because they can't see it. So just describe what we're looking at on the screen right now.
all right, we are looking at awesomeness. So you have four different images or four different characters. You have Michael in his flaming blue armor with his flaming sword. You have Cassandra, who has golden lightning crackling around her hands. Then above Cassandra is Akima, Lady Akima, who is a purple and silver dragon, who is Cassandra's mentor and teacher. She is the daughter of the Lords of the Western Dragons. So she knows all about bureaucracy and diplomacy and politics and things like that. And since she's like thrown into that world, and into that, environment, she is the perfect one to teach her. And then above Michael is the head of Captain Ragnar, who is this like 8 or 9 foot tall white tiger warrior, with bright blue eyes, and he's actually immortal. And then in between all of that, you have Charon, which is the capital of Aras, with one of the holy rivers flowing from the top. At the top of the mountain, there is Amai's sanctuary, basically like his temple and throne room. And so the 4 holy rivers flow from his throne in the 4 cardinal directions, and they give life to not only Aras, but the whole moon of Parasia. And then you have becoming, and then fire is in blue, and then lightning is in like golden, because Michael is blue and he represents fire, and then she's golden lightning, and that kind of thing. And so Dr. Catherine Hutchison Hayes, who is my writing mom and mentor, I've known her, I've worked with her for like 6 years. We're part of the same critique group together. She's awesome. She's like a soccer mom, like the smallest thing where, I do anything, accomplish anything. She's like, oh, it's amazing. And I'm like, dude, Catherine, calm down, bring it down a little bit. But she loves that. She calls me son and I call her mom. But last year she decided to open her own traditional publishing house. And so Dressed in Love Press, and on her own, she was like, hey, have you ever thought about signing with me? And I was like, I was actually planning on taking a completely different route with publishing, and that door just like slammed in my face and nothing happened with it. And then this came out of nowhere. I'm like, whoa, that was just really cool. So we collaborated together on the cover, and I gave her descriptions of characters from the book, and she's an artist. Like, she's an awesome artist. She teaches art classes to kids down in Guatemala in the dumps. And she works with an organization down there to help educate them and get them into a better life and things like that, and teaches art classes. She's amazing. She's awesome. And so she came up with an original image, and then I came in and gave more of my feedback, and we did some enhancing and things like that, and came out with this. And I showed this cover to my middle school students last school year, and they were like, that is really cool. It looks like something from Netflix or, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, cool. Okay, good. I'm glad that they like it. So there you go.
I just think that cover is absolutely gorgeous. So for the audio listeners, you missed out on an amazing cover. But if you want to see the cover, you have to go watch the video on YouTube later when it's uploaded. But I really just want to say that cover, it touches almost the 4 elements, right? The water, the ice, the fire. Which one am I missing? Air?
If you're talking about like the elements of Earth, yeah, be earth, fire, water, air, do a little.
So did you kind of bring that into the cover as well?
No, actually that wasn't even in anywhere in my mind.
Oh.
Now, as a child of the 80s and 90s, I watched Captain Planet and, some of those different kinds of things. But I don't know if that was just like subconsciously or whatever. But no, the river, the water represents the river of life that flows from the throne of God. That is in both in the Bible, in Ezekiel, and in Revelation. And it says that the trees that grow along the river. Their leaves are meant for the healing of the nations. They have healing properties, and then they produce fruit 12 seasons in every season. Like, so they always have fruit. And so those trees also in Aras always have fruit. There's healing properties, things like that. The water has cleansing and purifying and healing properties as well. The fire represents the Holy Spirit. And then, the lightning, it's another manifestation of the power of God. Lady Akima is the only dragon in that world that breathes ice. All the rest breathe fire. And that's because Amai, the Lord of Light and Life, chose her for a specific mission and purpose. And so he blessed her with that ice breath that heals. It also draws corruption and evil out of someone. And so she plays a big role in some of the other stories that are going to be coming out, where she uses that. Actually, she used it to save Ragnar's life. But that's all I'm going to say about that, because I've given.
I love the names that you're putting out there. Like, the characters' names are really interesting and different, and I love that. I'm a lady that likes different, so this is really drawing me in. And I'm a big dragon lover. For many of my listeners don't know that, but I love dragons. I just find that there's power within them, right? For safety, like the battle, like they'll come and they'll protect you. We have some more questions here for you, Terrance. And the next one is from Jason, and it's, who was your biggest writing influence growing up?
I think it would be the authors that I read. Like Brian Jakes. I read a lot of I read every book he wrote from his Redwall series. And that's a series where all the characters are animals. And so they fight with swords and armor and spears and weapons and things like that. It's good versus evil. And I love that. I love the chivalry thing. Hence the reason why I have the swords behind me. C.S. Lewis, J.R. Tolkien. I can't tell you the number of times I read The Hobbit. Absolutely loved it. There's so many authors that I've read that have influenced me, and different styles, different things. But even like the cartoons I watched, because the 80s and 90s in particular were really big on the heroes, and the hero was a hero. They weren't like, 1 minute they're acting like a hero, the next minute they're acting like a villain, like they have nowadays, where I'm just, that's one of them. Stop it.
Yeah, they're really breaking up cartoons. I don't like the cartoons that they're making today. I think they're all over the place. Like, it's like they woke up and went back to bed and then woke up again. Like, I don't know. It doesn't make any sense. There's no good storyline.
Not only that, but like, I'm a huge, I love Superman is my favorite superhero. Phenomenal cosmic power, to quote Genie from Aladdin, but he never crossed a certain line until they went and rewrote him a bajillion times and made him all sorts of stupid. And so, like, I'm a fan of the old school X-Men and a lot of those different types of characters and stuff. And yes, they had their issues, and all those different types of things, but there was that line of, hey, we have a moral code. And I'm very much one of those that, you got to have a moral code. If the whole relativism type thing where, you have your truth and I have my truth and I don't have to follow your truth. And it's like, well, there's just truth. There is no your truth, my truth. There's just truth. Whether we believe that it's truth or not is irrelevant, because it is truth. And the only one who determines what truth is God, because he created everything, and he's the one who will all have to give an account for, account to. Whether you believe in him or not is irrelevant. That's like my students. Some of them don't believe that I'm the one who runs the classroom, and they act as rebellious and vile as they possibly can. You laugh, but it's true. I mean, I've been cussed out to my face. I have been ignored. I've had children tell me, no, I'm not going to do any work. And then they get mad at me when they fail my class. You failed me. No, you failed yourself because you chose. And of course, we're humans. That's what we do. We act less than intelligent, and then we get all mad and offended when we have to face the consequences of it, and all that other silliness. And now we need disclaimers before we do podcasts with awesome ladies like Miss Liz. But so things like Star Wars and things of that sort, where again you had this type of knight, and there was a moral code, and it was very clear that this is evil and this is good, and for me, I've always loved that. For some reason, I've always loved that. And for the longest time, I saw myself as a person outside of time. Like, I don't know why I was born at the very end of the 70s, because I would much rather have a sword than a gun, a horse than a car, and give me armor and send me out to all that kind of stuff. And I didn't realize that the world needed someone like me, and that's why God had me born when he had me born. But there's a lot of different things that inspire, because everything is really interconnected.
Well, Terrance, we have a question here about you being a teacher. As an English teacher, what's the most rewarding lesson you've learned from your students?
The most rewarding lesson I've learned from my students: character. Oh. They have taught me a lot about character, because they have tried mine to no end. My students, every year, they reach that point where they realize when Mr. Niedziela gets a certain look on his face, it's because he is striving to control certain desires, because he doesn't want to end up in an orange suit. And again, you laugh, but ask any teacher, children, or anyone who's a parent, children will try you. And so I've learned a lot about patience. I've learned a lot about silence and controlling my mouth. I've grown a lot in these last 8 years, just being a teacher. And the importance of perseverance and not viewing things as they appear, because it's really easy.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was going to say, it's really easy for teachers to get to the point of despair and wanting to give up. And it's usually in those moments that I'll have a student, whether present or past, come to me and thank me. I had one this last school year that actually I ran into him. I don't even know how long ago I had taught him, but he actually apologized for the way he acted in my class. And it was like that level of maturity. He finally had reached that point, and I was just blown away by it, But.
So, Terrance, what got you into being a school teacher?
I'm a glutton for punishment.
So how old were you when you became a teacher?
Well, that was 8 years ago. I'm going into my 9th one now, and I'm 47. I teach English. I don't do math, so I'm not sure how long ago that was. But actually, I've always been like a teacher type person. I've worked in youth ministry. I've led men's Bible study, things of that sort, youth group, and that kind of thing. And I slip into teacher mode very easily. Even when I'm having regular conversations with people, I slip into teacher mode, and I don't mean to. It's not like I'm trying to be arrogant necessarily. It just happens. My original goal was to be a history professor. And so that's why I started with ancient Middle East history for my bachelor's degree. And then I made some less than intelligent decisions that changed the course of my life. And but in the aftermath of my less than intelligence, I ended up meeting the woman who became my wife. And we long distance dated for 2.5 years. She was in South Carolina. I was living in Wisconsin. And I met through her best friend. And I was telling someone about like our story and everything. And she's like, that's so a Hallmark movie. And I'm like, no, it's not. And then I was thinking about it. Yeah, actually it did kind of. But when we got engaged, she was like, I am not moving to the land of ice and snow. Anything that's below 70, she's like, this is horrible. She was born in Florida and grew up mostly in Florida and South Carolina. And so I'm like, okay, so I packed up and moved here. And then this upcoming August will be 14 years of marriage. And so I was just working different jobs and things. And my mother-in-law was like, why don't you get your master's degree? Why don't you get your master's degree? Why don't you get your master's degree? And finally, I'm like, okay, fine, I will. So I did. I got in English and creative fiction writing. And in the midst of my graduate studies, I was just praying, God, what do you want me to do with all this? And his response, the thought that passed through my mind was, it's on a need-to-know basis, and you don't need to know. And I was like, yes, sir, okay. And so I just focused on my studies. And then after that was when I really felt him say, okay, I want you to apply to be a teacher in the district that I now work in. And I wanted high school. That didn't work out. I ended up in middle school, and I've been there ever since.
Wow. God puts us on a path that we don't understand sometimes. And it's just like, just do it and just listen, because I know where I'm taking you. And it's a good journey. And sometimes it's scary. Sometimes it's like, what the heck am I doing? Where am I going? Like, what is this? You just never know. And that's all I'm doing with Tea Time is I'm just trusting God, and he knows where I need to go with this Tea Time. So the next question that came in for you is from James, and it's, what books do you recommend for young fantasy fans?
Oh man, I actually created a list. It's a long list and I posted it on my social media. I've been looking for it because I needed to dig it out and add some more names to it. But James R. Hannibal, his Light Raider Academy series is epic. It is awesome. I can't speak highly enough about it. It's amazing. I've actually interacted with him personally, and he's an amazingly awesome guy. Chuck Black is another guy. His Kingdom Chronicles and Knights of Eritrea, and then he actually has a science fiction series coming that he's working through right now that is epic. It is awesome. And I actually had the privilege of being on his launch team, and he's an amazing guy. His Starler Legacy. Let's see who else. There are so many. Of course, C.S. Lewis's Chronicles of Narnia is awesome. Danita K. Paul, her Dragon Keeper series is really, really good. I love the way she wrote that series. The main character is female, but in no way, shape, or form is it like, oh, that's a girly book, where guys would be like, this is just dumb. No, dudes, seriously, it is really, really well written. It is so cool. And there's this one guy that comes in a few books into the series who's just epic. He is awesome. I love him. And he's a knight. He's cool. Oh man, what else? And my mind is spacing now. There really are so many really good fantasy books out there. But start with those. And you can look on my social media too. So I know in my Instagram and my Facebook, I posted those up there. I gotta see if I can hunt those up again. But there's a lot of really good stuff out there, and it's clean, which is what I really look for, because when I was reading fantasy, it was mostly general market at the time. There really wasn't any Christian fantasy. And so there was a lot of graphic sex, graphic violence, cussing, those things that no child really needs to be reading.
Yeah.
It saturates our environment as it is. And so one of my guarantees that I put up on my website and also newsletter and things is I will always write clean. So there'll be violence, but it'll be very minimal, like PG level, nothing super graphic, but there won't be any sex. There won't be any innuendo or cussing or anything else like that. Because I'm not going to use my entire vocabulary in a single sentence, all the swear words and silliness. But so go with those and enjoy.
Well, the next question we have is coming in from Mac, and is there a character who surprised you while writing your book?
That's a good question. You know, that's so deep. I actually have to like do the beard stroke to think because um I'm not sure. Like the most challenging, I mean, I don't know if anyone's asked this yet, but the most challenging character, right, of course, was Cassandra, because I'm not a 17-year-old girl. And so I had different people who helped me with that and make it so that she wasn't obnoxious and and that kind of thing. Um, and so just her development of her character is really cool. Um, Living in her older brother's shadow, and then discovering that, hey, I really do need to be living the calling that God has placed on my life, and I need to focus on me. So often we humans, we focus on, you and you and you and you. And it's like, no, you have enough to deal with just trying to keep yourself straight. Um, but I have to say, am I, the Lord of light and life, because he represents God and the Lord Jesus. And just as I was writing him, because God has been teaching me about himself, the way I grew up and the way I was taught about God was very wrong. There were some things that were awesome and they were right on, spot on, and everything, but there were some things that were definitely not right and not even scriptural. And so God has been teaching me. And then even in the midst of writing his character for this series, and other projects for this series that I've been working on too, God has really been revealing more and more about himself and his heart and his good heart toward us, his goodness and his love and his justice and his righteousness and holiness, um, and just really the way he sees us when we mess up. He's not sitting there with the smite button, smite, 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 like so often is portrayed both in the secular world as well as in among religion. Now he is just, and he will deal out consequences for, and judgment will happen eventually. That is part of his holy character. But his justice and his judgment is always tempered with mercy. And so just writing his character, because both of my characters mess up big time in this book. Horribly. They mess up so horribly. And both of them have a scene where they stand before Amai. And they're so consumed with the shame and guilt of what they had done. And then his response, is really powerful in helping them to move on beyond that.
So, Terrance, how many books do you want to put in this series?
However many I can write before I transition the Eternal, because I could literally write into eternity and not run out of material. So, however many I can.
So, how long did it take you to write the book?
This particular one, 20 years. And a lot of that was just me not being diligent to work on it and get it done and that kind of thing. In fact, I have some older readers who have read the book, and they were like, we are not young anymore, so we can't wait years and years for the next book, And I'm not gonna take 20 years by any means. Like I said, I'm hoping to get the next one out in February of next year and then really, pop them out. And my publicist, when I told her about what this lady had said, he's like, don't be pumping them out left and right, because we need time to promote them, but I definitely have plenty of material to work with.
Well, that's good to know, because I love that cover. Like, that cover is amazing, and the stories and the characters. I just love the names. Like, you don't hear those names; they're really unique, and I'm really drawn to it. And I bet you my granddaughter would really love that book. Like, she's into all of the fantasy and science, so I think she'd really love that book. So that's going to be put on Grandma's Christmas wish list.
Cool. One of the things that I just want to tell you really quick. Some people get intimidated by the weird names, but what I do in all of my books for this series is in the back, there's a glossary that has pronunciation, who they are, and everything like that. So that really will help you with all the funky names. If you're like, how in the world do I say this name?
Well, it was almost like I asked you how I say your last name, right? And you told me how to say it. And I wasn't anywhere close because I was not going to say it that way. We have a question here from Papa Lenz. Is what's the biggest challenge you faced as an author?
Being diligent to put my butt in the seat and write and not be distracted. And even just writing when I don't feel like it. When I get done, especially during the school year, because by the time I get done teaching for a day, I am done. Like I am so exhausted. And yeah, it's like, I do need to write. I need to sit down and write and not just veg in front of the television or whatever. And so really it is that discipline of being diligent to write and that kind of thing.
Have you ever had writer's block?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I have. In fact, usually that comes because I didn't pray and ask the Holy Spirit to write through me. Because that's normally what I do is I'll pray, Holy Spirit, please write through me, whether it's brainstorming or actually sitting down to write. And when I do pray, it flows out and I'll just write and write and write. And then I'll stop and read it. And I'm like, that is amazing. Like that was not me. That was so God, because that is way too cool to have come from me. And then there's times when I don't, and I feel like I'm just like sludging through a swamp and everything. And the very gentle voice of the Holy Spirit in my heart of just, you didn't pray and ask me to help you. And I'm like, snap, you're right, I didn't, and then I do. And then it's a little bit of slogging and then it starts to flow again. And, but yeah.
So Terrance, once the book was done and it got published, how did you feel?
It was very surreal to me because for so long, it had been a distant dream, a distant hope, and looking forward and, what if this and what if that and all these different kinds of things. And then all of a sudden I'm holding it in my hand, I'm holding it in my hands and it's just like, it was very cool. It was very awesome. And even like I've worked with an amazing guy, Chris Bush, who has put together a book trailer for me. And I watched it and then I watched it again and it suddenly hit me. This came through me. Like this is the characters and things that God and I wrote together. And I actually got very emotional because it was like, it was very intense, and so for those who have had a dream like that, who have worked for so long to achieve something that you have longed for so long and put so much time and effort and sweat and tears and everything into it and wanted to quit a bajillion times, to slog through it, persevere through it and reach that point, reach that end, that's why you have the race runners or the mountain climbers or those types of things that they bust out in tears. Like, oh, some people make fun of it. Like, you don't know what it took to get there, So yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, well, 20 years is a long time, right? To see that it's actually finished and it published and you're holding it, right? I say this to all the writers out there. When you publish your first book and you hold it, there's just a feeling that you can't explain unless you're a writer yourself. Mm-hmm. It's really hard to explain that feeling, but it is surreal, right? Because it came from you. It came and it's there. It's on the paper and the pen is there. Everything is together. It's just like a pretty little present that was given to you. So Terrance, why do you believe this speculation fiction has such a powerful impact on readers?
It's through speculative fiction. And when we talk about speculative fiction, for those that don't know, that's science fiction, fantasy, paranormal, horror, anything that has like supernatural or extraordinary type elements to it. It's so powerful because we are spiritual beings. We are a spirit. We dwell in a body, and we have a soul. Soul is mind, will, and emotions. But we are an eternal being. And so that's the way God created us. And so the supernatural, the fantastical, they are a part of us. I mean, all you have to do is study history and cultures, and you see that, all of the art for thousands and thousands of years was always done in the honor of the divine. And so that's why you have the temples, you have the statues, you have the music and the art and the writings and all those different kinds of things. And unfortunately, we've lost that in our Western culture. We really have. And it's one of the reasons why we're not as creative as we used to be. And so, and it really addresses those questions that we have. Science fiction a lot of times is all about technology. Perfect example, Jurassic Park. We have the ability to bring dinosaurs back to life, and as was so eloquently put in the movie, just because you can do it doesn't necessarily mean you should, and we have all this stuff with AI now, getting more and more. I'm like, anyone who's seen the Terminator movies and the movies from the 80s, the 70s and 80s, it's like, yeah, we're just waiting for Skynet and, the Terminators to start, and I say that kind of jokingly, but still it's like, these were things that were talked about in those. You have in fantasy, you have the good versus evil and the heart of man and all of those tough questions. And it's done in a way, it's addressed in a way that inspires. When I saw that animated film, Flight of Dragons, I wanted to get merged with a dragon. Give me a sword and a shield and send me out against the forces of darkness. In fact, C.S. Lewis has a really, really cool quote, and I have it up on my wall, and I can only remember parts of it. But it's like, basically, kids need stories about dragons and evil and brilliant knights fighting against that, because our world is filled with evil, and they need to know that it can be addressed and it can be beat. In fact, even in the Lord of the Rings series, where Samwise says there is something good in our world and it is worth fighting for. It doesn't necessarily mean I pick up a physical sword and I fight somebody, or a gun, or things like that. There's other ways that we can fight battles. And I don't need to fly into a rage because someone disagrees with me, or slam them on social media or whatever, but that's what's so great about these genres, is I can talk through these different things, the questions that I have. In fact, writers, oftentimes we're writing about things we're dealing with, we're wrestling with. One author was talking about, I was listening to him, and he has said that he was going through a season where he really was struggling with forgiveness. Someone had done him really seriously wrong, and so he was struggling with forgiveness. And so he wrote a book or two where forgiving others was part of the topic and the theme, and that helped him with that process. So hopefully that answered your question.
Well, and I've said this many of times, right? Writing has saved my life. Like, what I could not express to people, I was able to put with the pen and paper on to, get it out, to release it. And a lot of writers, they'll build characters, they'll build worlds and fantasy lands. Like you said right at the beginning of the show, Terrance, you built these worlds for safety, because that was the only place you could feel safety. For me, it was Alice in Wonderland. I love going down the rabbit holes, and I still love going down those rabbit holes, because there's a lot of imagination down there. There's a lot of fun down there. There's a lot of play down there. Whereas as a child, I wasn't able to play. I wasn't allowed to be that child. But in Alice in Wonderland, I can be. So I kind of understand where you made these worlds so that you could get through, overcome all this hard stuff and challenges, and that's part of your adversity story, is that you went through these worlds, and like you said, you 80,000 years for this world. Like, I'm kind of curious, what do we not know about this world that we should know? Is it part of today's world mixed with that world? Like, is there a lot of similarities? There's so much that I want to see. So I'm really excited about the next book coming out as well. But for now, let's talk about where people can get this book, Terrance, and all that good stuff.
All right, so this book you can get it on Amazon, in Kindle, audiobook, and paperback, and then other websites, Thrift Books, Walmart, Barnes and Noble, Books a Million, those major booksellers and stuff like that also have it where you could purchase it from their website.
And Terrance, what do you hope the readers discover after reading your stories? Oh, did we freeze?
Nope, I'm thinking.
Oh,
Sorry, I didn't do the beard stroke again. I think one of the biggest things that I strive to point to is the goodness of God, and that He is not the source of the bad things that have happened to you. Because all of us have experienced things, right? All of us have experienced things, some far more horrific than others. But God was not the source of it. So often people say, well, God took them, or God caused this, or God caused that. That's not the case. That's not what the Bible says. We live in a fallen world. The kingdom of darkness still rules this world. But the time will come when the Lord Jesus will return and establish his kingdom and make everything right. But until then, we have a good God who has loved us so much that he sent his son for us to take the punishment for our rebellion and our less than intelligent decisions, so we wouldn't be destroyed as we deserve, because he is a righteous and holy God and a just God, and punishment has to be given. But he took that upon himself so that we could now, if we choose to make Jesus Lord of our life and make him our Savior, to be children of God. Where now God is our daddy. And he is good, and he is loving, and he is awesome. And yes, he loves us. But he also says, hey, danger, Will Robinson. Don't do that. That's not a good idea. Bad things are going to happen if you make that decision. And of course, being who and what we are, we do it anyway. But he is merciful and gracious enough to walk us through those consequences when we do face them. And so really that is my desire, that as people read these stories, that number one, God would be glorified. And number two, that they be drawn closer to him and get a better picture of the way he really is, because I strive to, especially with Amai, to really pull up what does the Bible say? What does Scripture say? Because that is his word. That's how he reveals himself. And so what better place to go to than the actual person to find out about them, so it's not hearsay. Yeah. If someone comes to me and says, hey, tell me about Miss Liz, and I could rattle off all sorts of kinds of stuff, and it may be true, may not be, but if they went to you personally, that'd be something completely different. Or people who really truly knew you, who lived life with you, and so that's really my goal.
Terrance, how can people reach out to you to have them on their podcast, or to get your book out there? How can people reach you if you just like to spell out your website for the audio listeners? Sure.
Well, my website is TerranceNiedielaJr.com. And if you go on there on my media page, there's information on there. If you want me on your podcast or things like that, your website, contact Mickey Mickelson with Creative Edge Publicity. He is the one that handles all of those kinds of things, and he's awesome. He is amazing. He's a great guy to work with. But you can find more information about Tales of Aras. I got a wiki that I'm putting together that has information about the different races and creatures and all sorts of fun stuff. And you can also find me on Facebook, Terrance Niedziela Jr., or my Tales of Aras page, or Instagram at Terrance Niedziela Jr., and you can find me there too.
Well, thank you so much. I really enjoyed this conversation, Terrance, and I can't wait to put this on my Christmas wish list for my granddaughter and get her feedback, because I always get her to read the book first, and then I'm just like, should Grandma read it? And she's like, oh, Grandma, yeah, that's a good one. So we're just going to do a recap of what tonight's tea time was, and I will be back on Monday with 2 tea times, Tuesday and Thursday. So there are 6 tea times coming to you next week. What an inspiring journey we've shared tonight together. Terrance, thank you for bringing your creativity, wisdom, and passion for storytelling to the tea time table. Tonight's conversation reminded us that imagination is more than an escape from reality. It is a pathway towards courage, hope, purpose, and understanding ourselves more deeply. We explored creativity, faith, education, history, and the beautiful responsibility storytelling carries to inspire future generations. One of tonight's greatest takeaways is this: every great story begins with someone brave enough to imagine what others cannot yet see. Through Tales of Aras, you continue building worlds that encourage readers to believe in courage over fear, hope over doubt, and perseverance over giving up. As both an educator and as an author, you reminded us that stories do far more than just entertain. They teach, they encourage, and they transform. As we close tonight's tea time, I'd like to leave everyone with this thought. If you were the hero of your own story, what courageous steps would you have taken next? Because every adventure begins with one decision to move forward, even when the path ahead is unknown. Thank you, Terrance, for sharing your heart, your imagination, and your passion for inspiring others through the gift of storytelling. Until next time, keep creating, keep encouraging, and keep serving real life tea, truth, experience, and awareness, one conversation at a time. And tonight's takeaway is stories don't simply change the pages we read, they change the people we become. When imagination is guided by purpose, every chapter has the power to inspire courage, hope, and a brighter tomorrow. And I'll see everybody next week, and we'll do this all over again.